We're taught that leadership has a certain sound, right? It's loud, it's confident, and it seems like it's always talking. But what if that whole picture we have in our heads is just wrong? What if the most effective leaders aren't the ones taking up all the airtime, but the ones who are actually listening? Well, we're going to get into it.
Go ahead, take a second. When you think of a really great leader, a strong, effective boss, what's the first image that pops into your mind?
I'm willing to bet it's someone who's super outgoing. The life of the party, the person at the center of every single meeting. This is the kind of leader we see in movies, the one our culture just loves to celebrate, the person who looks like they were born to lead.
Okay, so today we're going to challenge that classic image. And we're not going to do it with opinions, we're going to do it with hard data, the actual science that shows how a quieter approach can unlock some pretty incredible innovation and, profitability in a team. So first, we have to understand where this whole preference for loud leadership even comes from. It's not an accident. It's a really deep cultural bias, and it actually has a name.
Author Susan Cain calls it the extrovert ideal. It's this belief that's just kind of everywhere. The idea that to be successful, to be seen as ideal, you have to be this outgoing alpha performer. And this belief, it shapes everything from who we hire to who we decide to promote.
But here's the thing. It wasn't always like this. We used to live in what historians call a culture of character, where things like integrity and your inner virtue were what really mattered. Then, as big business grew, we shifted to a culture of personality. Suddenly, it was all about outer charm and how well you could sell yourself. And somewhere along the way, we started confusing being a good talker with actually having good ideas.
And the result of that shift is, well, it's staggering. Get this, according to some major research, a massive 96% of managers and executives show extroverted personalities. That's not a coincidence. It's a direct result of the extrovert ideal playing out in our companies. And you can see it pretty clearly. As you climb that corporate ladder, the concentration of highly extroverted people just gets higher and higher. But that leads to the billion-dollar question. Does having all these extroverts at the top actually lead to better results?
This is where all that conventional wisdom just completely falls apart. A few researchers from Wharton put this whole idea to the test, and what they found was this fascinating and honestly pretty profitable paradox.
So here's what they did. They ran a study on a big national pizza chain. They surveyed the managers to figure out their personality type, introvert or extrovert. Then they asked the employees how proactive they were, how often they'd suggest new ideas or better ways of doing things. And then they just tracked each store's profits.
The results are kind of shocking. In stores where the employees were full of ideas, the proactive ones, the stores led by introverted managers were 16% more profitable than average. But get this, when an extroverted leader was in charge of a similar proactive team, profits were 14% lower. Think about that. When your team has ideas, a loud leader can actually tank the bottom line.
So why? Why on earth does this happen? Well, the answer comes down to a really simple but profoundly powerful skill that quiet leaders have absolutely mastered.
Quiet leadership. It's not about being silent. It's about shifting the whole focus from telling people what to do to asking them what they think. It's about leading with real curiosity and deep listening, creating space for other people's ideas to actually be heard and, used.
To really nail this down, the same researchers ran another experiment. They had groups fold a bunch of t-shirts. Partway through, a member of the team, who was secretly one of the researchers, suggested a way faster way to do it.
So the groups that had introverted leaders, well, they were receptive to the idea. They listened, and they ended up being 28% more productive. Meanwhile, the extroverted leaders, they often felt a little threatened by the suggestion, or maybe they just didn't listen. And their team's performance suffered. They totally missed out on a brilliant innovation.
Now, this ability to listen and empower people, it doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It actually comes from a really strong internal foundation that these quiet leaders work to build.
You've probably heard of Google's famous Project Aristotle. They found that the single most important ingredient for a successful team is something called psychological safety. Basically, it's the belief that you won't get punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, or mistakes. And quiet leaders? They are naturals at creating this exact environment because they aren't trying to dominate the conversation.
See, their strength comes from within. It's built on self-awareness, so they know their own limits. It's built on emotional intelligence, so they can read a room. It's built on humility, so they can accept that someone else might have a better idea. And it's built on resilience, to stay calm under pressure. It turns out leadership really does start with leading yourself.
Okay, so how do we actually put this stuff into practice? Let's look at how anyone, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert can start using the power of quiet leadership to unlock their team's full potential.
The ancient philosopher Lao Tzu just nailed the essence of this thousands of years ago. Real leadership isn't about taking all the credit. It's about empowering your team so deeply that they feel this incredible sense of ownership over their own success.
And it comes down to 5 really concrete steps. First, practice active listening. Really hear what people are saying. Second, shift from giving orders to asking curious questions. Third, learn to love the pause. That silence gives other people a chance to think. And finally, you've got to actively promote collaboration and, of course, lead by example, modeling that calm, humble behavior you want to see in others.
And the payoff for doing this? It's enormous. Organizations that really embrace quiet leadership see way better employee engagement, higher morale, and smarter decisions because they include more voices. And they build way deeper trust across the whole company. It can literally transform the entire culture.
So let's end with this one thought. Our culture has trained us to look for power in the person holding the microphone. But the evidence is crystal clear. The real power, the kind that drives innovation and growth, doesn't belong to the one speaking. It belongs to the one who creates the space for everyone else to finally be heard.
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe button and join our community of bridge builders. Let's keep exploring the weird and wonderful ways our psychology shapes who we are today. See you in the next one.